Man, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of EOS. It's 10 Night and Jake, but I'm rocking with y'all rocking with me. And for this video, we're going to be going over the top 5 revenge murder cases. Number 5. The body of a boy was laying under a white sheet behind a decrepit abandoned home in northwest Baltimore. 13-year-old Taiwan Jones had been stabbed and slashed 228 times. 188 puncture wounds, some as deep as 6 inches, pierced his skull, lungs, ribs, liver, and kidney. He'd suffered lacerations to his arms and hands in a desperate but unsuccessful attempt to block the fatal blows. Word spread to the boy's mother, who rushed to the scene of the crime, but he'd already passed. An unknown boy approached her saying, "I'm so sorry. This wasn't supposed to happen, but we know who did it and we're going to get him." The next following days, investigators and journalists would try to piece together what happened, who was responsible, and what was the motive behind taking a 13-year-old's life in such a vicious and violent way. Police claimed it was a gang dispute, while the victim's older brother Anthony said it was his fault. He'd fought another teen at a bus stop, hit him once before the teen ran, but it just so happened the teen was a member of the Bloods and told his gang he'd been jumped. The gang swore revenge, and soon after, Anthony was shot at in an alley, luckily unharmed. A group of teens later showed up to his grandmother's house saying if they couldn't get him, they'd get someone he loved. November 29, 2007, his older brother Anthony received a MySpace message saying, "Go find your brother." He and a few friends drove around looking for him until they came across the crime scene, yellow tape drawn across the streets, and a body laying under a white bloodied sheet. The following month, police received multiple tips that Blood gang members Tavon Burks and Tyrone Walker were responsible. And without enough evidence to make an arrest, the case went dry, until 4 months later, after the 13-year-old's death, violence would strike again. Tavon Burks and Tyrone Walker were driven in an SUV to an apartment building parking lot. 4 men came running, hoods tied over their heads as they pulled Burks from the SUV. 5 gunshots went off. Walker attempted to run as another gunshot followed, tearing through his back, causing him to fall as the shooters piled into the SUV, driving right past him before vanishing. Walker was able to stagger around the corner where a police officer later found him, as Burks laid on the pavement taking his last breath. Detectives would later gather DNA evidence on top of confessions that Burks was responsible for the brutal stabbing of 13-year-old Taiwan, and at only 16, Burks would be crossed out by his own gang, left dying on the pavement, a victim of revenge. Walker would go uncharged in the stabbing, as he testified against the driver that set up him and Burks, the driver later being sentenced to 50 years for killing Burks. Taiwan's family felt the 16-year-old got what he deserved, publicly saying they were happy about his death, while Burks' older sister would tell reporters, "We won. Taiwan got it worse." Number 4. Chicago police and prosecutors said 3 eyewitnesses identified 19-year-old Maurice Harris as the lone gunman who killed 4 in a hail of gunfire outside Nadia's Fish and Chicken restaurant at 3:30 p.m. As gunshots rang out, killing 2 outside, the 2 other victims fled into the restaurant, followed by Harris, who opened the entrance door and gunned them both down. A day earlier, Harris's father, 37-year-old Jerry Jacobs, was shot and killed, seeming obvious that the quadruple murder was revenge for his father's death. 2 brothers, Dylan and Raheem Jackson, were killed in the shooting, one dying inside the restaurant as the other's body was found outside slumped by a tree. This was the same restaurant where their mother worked, as she can be seen outside grieving with her apron still on. 3 years later, Maurice Harris, also known as Wet 'em Up, would be acquitted of all 4 murder charges. Number 3. Kansas City police officers responded to a shooting in the 5600 block of Paloma Ave on January 10, 2020. When they arrived, they found a 16-year-old boy suffering from a gunshot wound inside an apartment. He was transported to a local hospital listed in critical condition, where he later died. Just 3 days later, officers responded to another shooting, finding a crime scene but no victim. Officers were then dispatched to another location, finding a shooting victim inside of a Toyota. 23 shell casings were found at the scene. He'd been shot once in the chest and once in the leg, dying on scene before paramedics arrived. Police used surveillance video to find 21-year-old Tatiana Coppage, and a search of her cell phone produced 2 texts. One was sent to her aunt asking for .45 caliber bullets, and another sent to her deceased brother saying, "Sent it to my brother, I owe him that body." Tatiana was arrested and charged with killing the 36-year-old man who turned out to be her own cousin. Court documents say she believed he was responsible for killing her 16-year-old brother 3 days prior, and since her arrest went viral, rappers 42 Dugg and DaBaby have offered to throw in money on her $200,000 bond that only requires 10% to be paid. She revealed this wasn't her first loss in her family, as back in 2016, her 8 and 9-year-old brother and cousin was shot and killed in their home while playing video games in a drive-by shooting. As of now, she remains in custody at the Jackson County Jail. Number 2. 31-year-old David Barajas and his son, 12-year-old David and 11-year-old Caleb, were pushing the family truck down a rural road in Texas after the vehicle ran out of gas. Just as they approached their driveway, a car plowed into them. The driver didn't swerve, he didn't brake. He drove right into the back of the pickup, killing the 2 boys. Their mother was sitting inside of the truck with the couple's 8-year-old daughter and 3-month-old son during the accident. Witnesses near the crime scene recalled hearing gunshots moments after the crash. Jose Banda, the 20-year-old driver of the car whose blood alcohol level was twice the legal limit, was dead behind the wheel with a gunshot wound to the head. During the investigation, a witness reported seeing the father leave the scene, walk home, and return to Banda's car, after which gunshots were reported. When authorities arrived on December 7th, 2012, vehicle dash cam captured David on his knees beside his son Caleb, appearing to attempt CPR. David Jr. died at the scene, and Caleb died at a nearby hospital. 2 months later, their father was charged with murder. His bond was set at $450,000. He'd later be released, and the case would proceed all the way till trial. Prosecutors made their case, saying police found an empty holster and ammunition inside of the home. A bullet fragment within the vehicle could possibly come from a .357, matching the ammunition found, and DNA evidence traced blood on the driver's side door and armrest of Banda's car back to David, but it wasn't enough to convict him. No witnesses to the shooting, no weapon recovered, gunshot residue tests of David's hands came back negative, and the bullet fragment could have come from another caliber weapon. David Barajas was facing life in prison, but was acquitted of the alleged revenge slaying. Number 1. Jeffrey Doucette was a 25-year-old karate instructor in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. On February 19th, 1984, he abducted a 10-year-old child he'd been teaching karate and sexually abusing for months. He traveled to California, New Mexico, and Arizona claiming the boy was his son. And on February 29th, the FBI managed to trace Jeffrey as he let the boy call his mother. The boy was immediately returned to his mother while Jeffrey was arrested for aggravated kidnapping. On March 16th, he was extradited back to Louisiana where the boy's father, Gary Plosh, was waiting for him at the Baton Rouge airport armed with a .38 revolver. Jeffrey can be seen on video being escorted by authorities through the airport, hands cuffed in front of him, as Gary patiently waited, pretending to be on a payphone until Jeffrey was within reach, and Gary pressed a .38 bullet through his brain, dropping him instantly. I don't think there was a single person in that room that really questioned why, and I don't think a single person in that room felt bad for Jeffrey, whose body lay stiff as every sick, twisted thought leaked out of his head and onto the airport floor. Charged with second-degree murder, Gary pled no contest to manslaughter and was controversially given a 7-year suspended sentence, along with 5 years of probation and 300 hours of community service. Gary would go on to complete his sentence without ever serving time in a cell and passed away in 2014 at the age of 68. Now, these were 5 wild cases, and after hearing the cases, I can't really blame the people involved, especially number 1. I actually salute the father for his actions, and they gave him 300 hours of community service when what he did was the best service he could have done for the community. But if you like this video and you'd like to see more top 5 videos in the future, go ahead and drop a comment in the comment section. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It's 10 out of Jake. I'm rocking with y'all rocking with me. Till next time.